So now I'm here to introduce to you WPEC Channel 12 StormTrac Chief Meteorologist Vytas Reid and Channel 12 StormTrac Meteorologist Covey.
All right. Well, good afternoon. How are you all doing today? Yeah, have you guys got full bags of swag? All that good stuff? Yeah, let's see it. How y'all feeling on this side of the room this morning? I don't hear you. Hey, okay, how about this side of the room? How y'all feeling? Oh, wait up. Somebody over here feels better than this side. Can you get a little bit louder than that? How y'all feeling? All right, is everybody ready for hurricane season? Oh, I thought I was going to hear crickets. Cricket, cricket, cricket. And everybody wants to be ready for hurricane season because, you know, one of the biggest things for me, I'm kind of a newbie down here. And I'm going to tell you, I talked to a lot of people at the booth who walked by and said, hey, where are you from? And I'm like, well, I'm originally from Michigan. Anybody from Michigan? And you know the glove. Okay, all right. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the worst kind of storms we would get was lake effect snow. And it was a lot of lake effect snow. So I'm talking about where we have 6 to 10 inches, and the next day we're still going to school. Okay, so it's like put on your boots, go to school. So, you know, it's a different world up there. But then I lived in Baltimore for 18 years and did weather there and had to deal with the I-95 corridor. Anybody from the Mid-Atlantic? Somebody from Mid-Atlantic, D.C., Maryland, Virginia? Okay, well, it's kind of tricky there, but a lot of influence down here from New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, and I talked to a lot of folks down here, and I've lived here 1 year, 2 years. So what Zach's going to talk about is going to be very important for you to listen because the most important part about hurricane or any type of storm, it could be a tornado, could be flooding, could be lightning, could be wind damage, any type of weather-related phenomena, it's about your knowledge, what you know, how to react, what you need to do. And if you are prepared, that's what's the most important part. So preparation is key to anything. So you aren't left, I'm not sure what to do. Oh my God, there's a tropical storm watch. Oh, there's a tropical storm warning. What's the difference between the watch and warning? We're in the cone of possibility? What does that cone mean? Is it ice cream cone? Is it extra toppings on the cone? No, what does it mean? It means that, you know, what we do in our job is to explain that to make it a lot easier for you to know what to do, how to react, how to take action, and keep your family safe. That's the most important thing for us. So we care for all of you. So when we do our jobs every day, it could be a heavy thunderstorm, dropping a lot of rain, and the sun's out on the beach, but you hear a rumble of thunder. We're telling you going to be a chance of showers and thunderstorms. We want you to listen because we care about you. We care about your families. We worry about your stuff, a house, a car, but we care more about you. And we want to make sure you're safe and you know how to interact or operate if there is that type of a situation, such as a hurricane or a tropical storm. So that's what we do in our jobs, and we love you guys. That is the big key. We love you guys, you know? Yeah, you can clap for that, because we do. We love you, and we appreciate that you guys watch us, or whoever you're watching, whoever you choose, it's important for you to know that we're all doing the same thing. We're all working together to try to make it a safer place for your community and for your household and for your families. So that's what we're here for. So anyway, once again, I'm very happy to be this chief meteorologist for this department. We have some great talent at CBS 12. Covey, this guy right here, this is like a walking scientist. I love this guy. He knows a lot of stuff, and let me tell you, he's teaching me a lot of stuff all the time. I'm the old dog in the department as well as I'll throw Michael Lamberg under the bus too. Us, both of us, but we're the old dogs in the department. But Zach is a great guy. Also, Lauren and Jennifer. So you can tune in at different hours, whatever works with your schedule, and get the latest and greatest in our information. So what he has is some information. I'll turn it over to him about some things about our hurricane season, what we've seen, what we can expect potentially across parts of our area, kind of pinpointing some ideas and concepts, and then we'll leave it open for the end for some questions if you have to ask us some questions that might be stirring in your brain. So thank you very much for your kindness. I turn it over to the Z-Man. It's all up to you, man.
Thank you, Vytas. All right, I'm going to set my phone here because I realize people probably have things they want to do at the end of this. So I'll try and stay on track. How is everyone today? Good, good, good. So my name is Zach. You don't have to put the meteorologist title. It's all good. But basically, I am a hurricane specialist. I went to Florida State University, and I studied meteorology there for 4 years with a specialization in tropical meteorology. So I am a tropical hurricane specialist. That is my go-to department. If you ask me about snow in the winter, I'm going to defer you back to Vytas. He can talk about the snow. That's not going to be me. So when we talk about hurricane stuff, you can always trust in me to kind of detail that stuff out for you in a way that you want to understand. The bottom line is, unfortunately, it is likely to be an above normal season. This is coming from NOAA. They're predicting a 65% chance of an above normal season, about a 25% chance of a near normal season, and only a 10% chance here in green of a below normal season. Now, what that basically means is we are highly likely to see a lot more storms than we normally would, but that does not mean that we know where these storms are going to go. So it is very, very important, very vital that you follow along all hurricane season long about where we're watching these storms eventually grow, develop, and move. Now, the next update from NOAA is actually going to come out in August, so we're about 1 month out. It'll be early August from the Climate Prediction Center, and from all accounts that I've heard from sources over there, they are likely to stay with an above normal season. We're already running above normal to this point. Now, you might hear NOAA, obviously, puts out their forecast. Colorado State also puts out their forecast, and I've highlighted it here along with tons of other people that put out hurricane forecasts. Colorado State actually just updated their forecast a couple days ago. You guys might have heard it. You guys might not have. The bottom line is their update was no update. They're keeping it the same. 20 named storms, 10 hurricanes, 5 of those hurricanes becoming major Category 3 or higher. If we take all of the companies that put out their hurricane forecasts, we're averaging it out to 19 named storms. Of those 19 storms, 8 projected hurricanes, and 4 of those would be major. That would classify as an above average season. So there's a range of reasons why this above average season could exist. One, obviously above average sea surface temperatures. If you guys have been to the Atlantic waters just off of our coastline, it is hot. This morning in Apalachicola, Florida, which is just south of Tallahassee, go Knowles, waters there reach 90.6 degrees. 90.6, and it is only early July, so that is starting to be a concern for the northern Gulf as well. So there are little hot spots that we're already starting to observe these above average sea surface temperatures. And finally, the current ENSO pattern continues to suggest that we are not going to see El Nino. How many of you have heard of El Nino, La Nina? Okay, a lot of hands. How many of you understand what that means? Okay, some people do, some people don't. We'll touch on ENSO in just a second. I want to show you the sea surface temperatures. This was taken this morning when I was at work. Look at the main development region, above average. Look at how dark red the northern Gulf is, much above average. Now, we are starting to see some below average temperatures south of the Azores there. The Azores are right here. Sometimes when we see this cold pool move south, it can inject into the MDR and lower this. We'll need to see. July is going to be the month that really talks about whether or not we can cool off the main development region. And if it does, that could reduce the hurricane forecast. But again, there's a lot of kind of wait and see. This month is going to be that big month where we actually watch that. This is an animated GIF from my buddy Eric Webb, fantastic tropical meteorologist out there. And what we're looking at here in blue is reduced wind shear. And all of these white dots indicate significant values of note of reduced wind shear. Notice as we go throughout the months of August, September, October, you have a big swath of reduced wind shear in this area, which indicates that that area will be favorable for major hurricane development. So we will be watching that as well. Finally, let's talk about the hurricane season to date, because we've already had 3 named storms. We have potential tropical cyclone 1. You guys may remember this as Alex. This is the storm that canceled this very event in June. So it moved overhead, created a lot of rainfall. We actually had a lot of rainfall from Alex. On June 2nd, it was declared potential tropical cyclone 1. produced very heavy rain, a few strong wind gusts in South Florida. We had measurable gusts of 50 up to 60 miles per hour in Hobe Sound, believe it or not. And then on June 5th, after the storm was past Florida, it finally developed a low-level center, which we were able to classify as Tropical Storm Alex. It did peak with winds of 70 miles per hour as it passed the island of Bermuda. Look at some of these rain totals, though. So again, when we talk about hurricanes, you think of Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5. But remember, tropical depressions, weak tropical storms, they may not have the winds, but they can have some rain. 13 inches in Miami. By the way, that fell in just a day and a half. In a day and a half. Everglades picked up about 10.3. Pembroke Pines about 8.8. Boca picked up 7.8. Delray 3.2. Even along the Treasure Coast, we picked up anywhere from 5.3 in Vero Beach. Over to Sebastian, 4.6. Here in Port St. Lucie, they lucked out a bit. You guys had a bit of a dry slot, so 2.2. It wasn't as impactful here in St. Lucie County as some models had suggested. But there were locations where major flash flooding happened. So when we go into hurricane season, just because we say it's a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm doesn't mean it's not going to be impactful. This Alex, Tropical Storm Alex, is proof that it can still produce a lot of flash flooding. Miami had major issues with that. Then we had Tropical Storm Bonnie. This was actually very recent. It was a wave that came off very early off of Africa, worked its way through the MDR, and finally became potential Tropical Cyclone 2 on June 2nd. Or, excuse me, June 27th. The storm finally developed a low-level center. It took forever to do, but it was finally given the name Bonnie on July 1st, and it made landfall in Costa Rica on July 2nd. It had 50-mile-per-hour winds and a central pressure of 997. So this storm is interesting because it actually moved from the Atlantic over Central America, and that's the Pacific Basin. And believe it or not, that storm intensified in the Pacific Basin. It is only the second time we have ever had on record a storm go from the Atlantic, cross the Central American continent, and move into the Pacific Basin with its low-level center intact. Which means even though the Pacific Basin has a B storm already, they also got another B storm. It maintained the name Bonnie, and in fact, it strengthened to a major Category 3 hurricane as it raced offshore. It has now fallen apart. Finally, we had Colin. You guys may be saying, I don't remember Colin. Yeah, Colin was a storm that developed and fell apart in about 24 hours. It quickly developed near South Carolina on July 2nd. The National Hurricane Center called it Colin. Most models really just failed to pick this storm up, but it did produce some rain along the coastal Carolinas. So we've now had 3 named storms. Year to date, if we look at where we are now, in 2020, we had 6 named storms at this point. 2021, we had 5. So we are well below average from where we've been the past 2 seasons. But when we compare that to our 30-year average, we're actually above where we should be. Historically, we should only have 1 named storm at this point. So yeah, it's a quieter season than 2020 and 2021 so far, but we are still running above average. And that, again, lends credibility to the idea of an above-average season. So what's still to come? When's the next big uptick? If you've been watching me or Vytas or Jen or Lauren or Michael, you guys have heard us say no tropical development in the next 5 days. And to be completely frank, probably no tropical development in the next 2 weeks. We're actually in something called the suppressed phase of the MJO. This is a very fancy term, but basically there are 2 areas, one of rising air in the globe and one of sinking air in the globe. And that rising air, this enhanced phase, is actually over Asia right now and the far western continent of Australia. The MJO typically takes about 30 to 60 days to move across the globe. And when it does move across the globe and eventually into areas of Africa and the Atlantic, it can really intensify the development for hurricanes. Right now we're in that suppressed phase, which kind of keeps out the risk of tropical development. But once that enhanced phase moves back in, which looks to be the 3rd or 4th week of July into the first 2 weeks of August, we could be talking about more tropical development somewhere in the Atlantic Basin. So put it on your calendar, that 3rd, 4th week of July. Wouldn't be surprised to maybe see one of those areas that the Hurricane Center says, we're going to start watching this wave. In fact, you can actually see it. This is something you guys would never see on air, but something we utilize behind the scenes. All tropical meteorologists utilize this. This green is that enhanced phase, that rising air. And notice how it sits over the African continent here. That's going to generate all of those African waves, which will then roll offshore into the Atlantic. So seeing all of this green over this period of July 26th through August 16th indicates that we are likely to see a very prolonged period from late July into at least the middle of August of tracking some tropical waves, of which some of those waves could develop into tropical systems. Of course, heading into August, 25% of all named storms happen in the month of August, and 29% of all major hurricanes happen in the month of August. You move into the month of September, nearly half of all major hurricanes happen during that month of September. So as we work our way towards the peak of hurricane season, which is September 10th, we need to keep in mind that these storm numbers are likely to increase through August and September. Historically for Florida, we actually see the most named storms threaten the state of Florida in the month of October. Even though the peak of hurricane season is September 10th, historically, Florida has seen more storms in the month of October. So when you start hearing people say, hey, you're on the other side of the peak, it's all good news from here, keep in mind October, historically, is something we need to watch here in Florida. So Colorado State obviously puts out their seasonal forecast. And 3 years ago, they started to really get hyper-local. What is it going to be in your county? Now, I want to stress, these numbers are still very, very new for Colorado State. However, there is some skill to it. In fact, over the past 3 years, year over year over year, their percentage odds of getting this correct have been high. They highlighted all of the counties of Louisiana during the record 2020 and early 2021 seasons for the potential of being the hot spots of those seasons. And sure enough, we saw what happened in Louisiana. Sure enough, that was correct. So historically, Indian River and St. Lucie County average about a 36 to 37% chance of seeing a named system, tropical storm, hurricane, major hurricane, of making landfall. This year, Colorado State is indicating that we are likely to have about a 1 in 2 shot in both of these counties to have at least one named storm make landfall in these counties. If we head farther south, those odds actually increase towards Palm Beach. And in fact, Palm Beach is the 3rd or 4th highest county in the country rated for a named storm landfall this year. So again, take this as you will. This is still a very new percentage thing put out by Colorado State, but the meteorologist over there, headed up by Philip Klotzbach, a fantastic tropical meteorologist, he's been doing this for decades now, it shows some skill, and this is something that we're obviously going to be tracking over the next several years. Now, if you look at the hurricane return period, which is the average years between when a county will see a hurricane make landfall, along our areas, we tend to see a hurricane make landfall every 7 to 8 years. To put that in perspective, the last hurricane to make landfall in our area was 2004. 2004. Yeah, Francis. So this is obviously a long hurricane drought that we have experienced now. Hopefully that drought can continue, but again, the 1 year that we say it's not going to happen, it would. So we need to make sure we're constantly being prepared. Same thing, average years between major hurricane landfalls, we average a major hurricane of Cat 3, 4, or 5 strength between every 16 and 19 years from Palm Beach County north through the Treasure Coast. So we talked about ENSO real quick at the very start, and I said we'll really dive into it here. What is ENSO? It's called the El Nino Southern Oscillation. Basically a big fancy word for saying how warm or cold are the waters off of the equatorial Pacific. So it is this big red box. See all that blue? That indicates well below average sea surface temperatures. And when that happens, that indicates that we are moving into a La Nina period. Now, we have been in a La Nina period for 2 years. Historically, it is exceptionally rare to have 3 La Nina periods back to back to back. In fact, dating back in the records, the last time we actually had this, and I looked it up this morning. I believe it was in the early 60s. That was the last time we had a back-to-back-to-back La Nina pattern. Well, that's happening again. It looks like we will be in a La Nina pattern. So what does that mean? Well, in an El Nino pattern, this whole area would be warm. And that would actually lend to enhanced wind shear in the Atlantic. And again, storms don't like enhanced wind shear. It tears them up. So that would lower your risk of seeing tropical storm development in the Atlantic. But unfortunately, we're in a La Nina period. That cooler air actually intensifies wind shear in the eastern Pacific and reduces that wind shear in the Atlantic. And a reduction in wind shear, especially trade winds, can also help to warm temperatures up. They can kind of work hand in hand. So obviously, this is a big pattern that we're going to be watching. The fact that La Nina could be happening for a third year in a row will be substantial and another big driving factor into that potential of an above-average season. In fact, if we look at the ENSO states from the Climate Prediction Center for the months of August, September, and October, which would be peak hurricane season, they're forecasting a 55% chance of La Nina occurring, neutral conditions about a 45% chance, and yeah, only a 5% chance of El Nino. So clearly, El Nino will not be happening. The question is, will we be in more of a neutral, a typical pattern, or could this be a La Nina pattern which could set up an above-average season yet again? Historically, if we do move into a La Nina pattern, we tend to average 4 major hurricanes per year during the months of during the years of El Nino. In fact, look at 2020. We had 6 major hurricanes in 2020, and that was a La Nina year. If you move back to 2017, which was the prior La Nina year, that was also 6 major hurricanes. So you can easily see major hurricanes are more popular in these blue bar, these La Nina periods. So again, if we are likely to be in La Nina during peak season, expect more of those category 3, 4, or 5 storms. Again, it doesn't tell you where they're going, but it is something we need to be aware of. So what can you do now? Create a hurricane kit. Know your evacuation routes. Perform those insurance checkups and consider flood insurance. Remember, flood insurance is not something that comes default with your homeowner's insurance. You have to do that separately. Also, remember with insurance checkups, if you've done something new to your house or your renter's insurance or what have you, and a storm is threatening, a lot of those insurance companies are going to cut it off. They're going to say it's too late to do what you want to do to fix your policy. We're done. Good luck. So do that now. Get it done now. So hopefully you won't need it, but if so, you feel more prepared when a storm is heading. By the way, know your evacuation routes. FloridaDisaster.org is our local state website for knowing your zone. You can go to that website and actually type in your address, and it'll come up with a very big map, and it'll tell you what zone you're in and the different evacuation routes that you can take to get out. Remember, we're here in the peninsula. There's only 2 ways to go, north, south. If you evacuate east-west, it really doesn't matter. At that point, storms are so big here and the peninsula is so small, you're still going to feel impacts. So you just need to know, are you going north? Are you going south? What are your routes? What are your options? But FloridaDisaster.org, a fantastic website for that. There's my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram, my email. Jot them down. Use them. I'm very active during the tropics season. A lot of people always have questions. You can shoot them over to me. I would love to answer them. I'm very active during the hurricane season in answering all of your questions. That is what I am here for. That is my whole job of being a hurricane specialist. So if you guys have any questions, there you go. I hope you liked the presentation. Thanks for sticking around. I think it's almost 2, so yeah.
All right, once again, thank you all for your time. And if you have any questions, please ask a question. We'll try to answer them for you.
Any questions? Yes. So the question for those that didn't hear is, we always hear European and American models. Is there one model that's more accurate than the other? Historically, the European has been more accurate. Now, with that being said, NOAA and the National Weather Service have put billions of dollars in improving the American model. And in fact, last year, we did a major upgrade to it. And the American model was significantly better than the European all of last season. So far this year, The American has slightly underperformed to the European, but a lot of these systems have been weak, have been sheared, have been short-lived. So it's still kind of, the jury's still kind of out on how it's going to perform long-term for the remainder of the season once we get into those bigger storms, those more developed storms. Could the American go back to what it was last year? But last year, by far, the European slacked, even though historically it is the better one. The bottom line is you're always going to have two stories. The truth is going to likely lie in the middle of those two roads, and that's our job as meteorologists, is to try and show you the different models and then deduce it down to, okay, here's the real story. It's likely going to be more of this type of a route. So you can pay attention to all those models you want. Always pay attention to the cone from the Hurricane Center. They do a very good job at making sure that it balances out those bias. Any other questions? Yes. So the question was, what's the impact of Saharan dust? And that's a big thing right now. We actually have a big Saharan dust plume outbreak right now over the Atlantic, which is another driving factor of why the next 2 weeks are likely to be quiet. Saharan dust dries out the atmosphere. Remember, hurricanes are big moisture engines. They utilize moisture in the atmosphere from the surface all the way up 50,000 feet above our heads. So if you're adding in dust, if you're sucking all of that moisture out, these storms are literally choking themselves to death, and they cannot thrive in that environment. So anytime we have Saharan dust outbreaks, you're going to likely lower down that hurricane count. However, Saharan dust outbreaks are more likely in June and July. They become much less likely August onward because the winds of the African easterly jet tend to decrease, and we tend to get more storms over Africa by that point, so you're moistening up the atmosphere. So this is likely the last major Saharan dust outbreak that we're experiencing right now for the season. We'll have little ones here and there, but this is likely the last major Saharan dust plume of the season. Yep. Thank you so much for coming out, by the way. I appreciate it. And thanks so much for coming out, guys. Have a great one.
Thank you all for coming. See you again next year.